Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
As I mentioned yesterday, it was a quote from Winston Churchill. No such thing as lasting enemies, no such thing as lasting friends. The only thing that lasts are interest. Folks, this is the C.L. Bryant Show. I'm C.L. Bryant, and I want to welcome all of you aboard here today as we stream nationwide throughout the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known, and that is America. All of you folks in North Carolina, now in Durham, Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and Wilmington, and you folks in Southern Arkansas, East Texas, want to thank you for being there as well. The big question that we're all facing right now is what type of interest still bond us together as Americans. Friendships that apparently don't last, and certainly enemies change horses and change courses as we go down this journey, this road together. But it seems as though the thing that do bind us together are our common interest. When we look at the American political scene right now, the common interest are beginning to glare at us. That's what's lasting, the common interest. And we have to ask, what is driving that interest? What is driving those things that make people bond together over a theme? I was looking at this Bethune-Cookman graduation the other day where DeVos was, Secretary of Education DeVos was speaking there, and the interest that led to almost a mob-like mentality has been spawned, nurtured, and fed financially by progressive liberals and George Soros money. At this very prestigious HBCU, the graduates turned their back on the Secretary of Education, booed her. You've heard me say this before, that there is a element, a new era of incivility that I do believe will lead to a society, certainly of people who are uncivil. That is the logical progression in that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more today, but folks, there are things that I will call perceived interest in this conversation that we have today, and that can create not only racist attitudes, but it also create because of the collective interest that groups have, a mob mentality. That is what we're seeing on the college campuses. We're seeing a mob mentality. People you do know act much differently when they are caught up in a mob mentality than they would ordinarily as individuals. Interest. Friends, Churchill said, don't last. Enemies don't last. What does last are your collective interest. I'm wondering, and I want to ask you the question, who is interested in altering or fundamentally changing America? Because as you sit there, wherever you are, or where you might be walking, you might be driving, what have you, whatever you're doing right now, as you're doing it, you had better believe that there is an interest in fundamentally changing America. Where have we heard that phrase before? The fundamental change of America is taking place before your eyes. The revolution actually is being televised. It's being televised. That demonstration the other day at Bethune-Cookman was televised. There's a revolution going on. The Black Lives Matter protest is televised. The firebombing and the unrest on Berkeley's campuses against Ann Coulter is televised. What I did not know is that the catalyst for this revolution would be the embracing of conservative thought, the embracing of saving the republic, the embracing of things that have made us as Americans 241 years this year. The embracing of those values somehow are becoming the catalyst for unrest in this country. Somehow that is becoming xenophobic, homophobic, is becoming hate speech. But it's perceived. It is not real. Those interests in fundamentally changing America is perceived. They're not real. They are the creation of those who have been at work for a long time, wanting to change the landscape, especially the social landscape of America, which means that we are being socially engineered. And the catalyst for that is, and the laboratory for that, is on the college campuses of our nation. We pay a lot of attention to things like the Russians are doing it. The Russians are doing it. But no, folks, we are doing this to ourselves. We are creating a mass hysteria over things that will never truly affect us in a negative way. But when we look at what we are doing to ourselves, there is something lasting about that will affect us in a way we will never recover from if we continue down this road. Now, don't you go anywhere. Later on in the show, coming up is California Ted Hayes. He'll be talking to us from occupied Los Angeles, California. This is the Weekend Show with C.L. Bryant. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back with more in just a minute. Yeah, we got to take care of some business. America, do you hear me? We got to take care of some business if we are to survive and if we are to move forward together in this great land of ours, the greatest nation, as I always say, on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known. But even great nations that have come before us, you look at all of the relics that are on the scrap heap of time, and go visit Rome if you want to. Visit the great churches that were once in Europe. The great cathedrals are now museums. Visit Athens, Greece, great societies, many of them. You can visit the ruins of what they once were, that represent what they once were. And it makes me think, it makes me wonder if we don't take care of the American business here in our nation as we do need to do. If we do not take care of our business, how long will it take for us to find ourselves in ruins on the scrap heap of history, counted as all the other great societies, the great civilizations like Rome, like Greece, have faded into pretty much obscurity as far as significance is concerned. Oh, yes, it's still great to visit a place like Rome. It's still great to visit Athens, Greece. But what true significance do they actually have as far as the world stage is concerned? There was no civilization. There was no power greater on earth than Rome. The Greeks, they could outthink anyone. When we won our independence as a nation, the sun did not set on the British Empire. They were great. They were the greatest power on earth. Now we do hold that distinction. But as we look at ourselves beginning to implode, we're beginning to implode. And we can celebrate our 4th of Julys. We can celebrate all of the things that America is known to celebrate and still feel good about the holidays that we have. But if the implosion is complete, if we allow the forces that would fundamentally change our nation to complete its course, and those who are hell-bent on completing it, if we allow that, then look at Rome. Look at Athens. Look at what's happened to England. Look at Europe itself. We too can wind up on that scrap heap. And guess what? We become so common that we only have left to say of ourselves, well, we once were. Some of the saddest words that you can ever hear is this, coming from a great champion, a great representative. And those are the words, I once was. Trying to recapture the glory days can never be done. Recapturing the glory days can never be done. You can only try. You can only recall them. You can only recall the era of greatness that you once enjoyed. America, the most beautiful thing about our nation is that from year to year, from decade to decade, and now we have survived 2 centuries and almost a half, 2 centuries and a half we're headed toward. And the beautiful thing about America was the fact that every decade, every year, we were able to say that we are headed toward brighter days. We are headed toward new horizons. We are still the greatest nation on the face of the earth. But if we become common, if we are fundamentally changed, the idea is to make us just as all the other nations. And if everyone is great, or if everyone is common, then everyone reaches a level of mediocrity. The doctrine of mediocrity is, in fact, being preached. It has been started, and there is no question in my mind that it is by design. You can look at your elementary schools, and you can look at those who want all of us, starting in kindergarten, to receive some type of trophy, which of itself reeks of mediocrity. Why have championship basketball? Why have the World Series or the Super Bowl if, in fact, it exists in a country where the citizenry only look to sports heroes for winners and losers? What is the point in that? Do they then become the Hercules? Do they then become the Achilles of our American history, and the citizenship become common among ourselves because all of us have lost the desire to excel, to be great, and to decipher what is real and what is not real as far as news is concerned. Yes, I do agree with the idea of fake news because it does indeed exist. Fake news is real. The oxymoron of that, the paradox of it. Fake news is real. And it's becoming more real to the unlearned and has been said unwashed masses all around this nation, and they are, in fact, gaining strength. Those who are unlearned, those who are defiantly ignorant to the truth of who we are and what we were intended to be, which takes us to the idea of purpose. We used to have the same interest. As I opened the show, I told you that friendships change, enemies change. But what doesn't change is the bond that same interest brings to a nation. Same purpose. Talk a little bit more about that. Coming up in the show is California Ted Hayes. He'll be talking to us from occupied Southern California. You don't want to miss it. He's one of your favorites. I'm CL. Be right back. CL, back with you on this Friday, broadcasting from the flagship station of the CL Bryant Show, 101.7 and 710 Keel in the jewel cities of the Arklatex, Shreveport, and Bossier. Your native son, this is my hometown, and I want to thank all of you throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth for joining us here today. This show will be replayed on our friend station, The Promise, tomorrow and on Monday morning. Have you heard? Aetna is pulling out of all exchanges in this Obamacare, affordable health care market. Pulling out. Which basically means that the fundamental change, a part of it anyway, at least a key component of what was said by the former President Barack Obama, the fundamental change as far as Obamacare is concerned is hearing, at least on the health care front, the death knell. With Aetna pulling out of the health care exchange, the Affordable Health Care Exchange pretty much says that Obamacare is dead as it has been known. But those of us who were a part of the grassroots movement going back 8 years were telling you that this day would come if, in fact, we embraced this affordable health care program now known throughout the world as Obamacare. What do the Democrats want? The Democrats want single payer. What does that mean? What does that mean in case you've been on Mars and living somewhere in a mushroom cave? It means that insurance is had by everyone, but we as taxpayers get to pay for it. Like England, like Canada, doctors, of course, get to wait for their money, which takes us back to the doctrine of mediocrity that I was talking about in the last block medicine and medical doctors wind up on a scrap heap as well in America, where we once were the brightest and shiniest light throughout the world as far as medical care is concerned. You know that sheiks, princes, kings all came to America for their health care if it was truly that serious. Why? Because we were able to offer the best and brightest doctors and medicine in the world. What made it that way? The open and free market, the competitive edge that they had against and for each other did create something very special, and that is excellence. Yeah, competition creates excellence. The only difference in the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots is the culture of excellence. Yeah. I had a chance to be in a seminar with Coach Bill Belichick. And let me tell you something. Like him, hate him, whatever. And I'm a Cowboys fan for the record. But like Belichick or hate Belichick, there is something that he has instilled in his club, in his football club. And that is no accepting defeat, no accepting excuses, a culture of excellence. That once was the culture, unequivocally, with our nation, with America. If we went to war, we went to war to win it. There were winners, there were losers. And hey, it only made us better. Medicine, even the race to the moon. We had to get there. The Russians, they one-upped us by putting Sputnik in orbit before we could get there. But hey, we put John Glenn up there. And from that point on, even though John Kennedy may not have been the most popular president of his time, he did say something that did trumpet and resonate the attitude of a time. That by the end of the decade, the 60s, he was saying this in 1961, we would put a man on the moon and return him to the earth safely. We not only put one on the moon, we put two. And we returned them to the earth safely. Because the Russians had beat us first into space, the competition, the American spirit, the DNA of a champion nation that we are, still are, gave us the drive to reach the moon first. And quite frankly, you know it's true. We're the only ones who've been there. That level of excellence makes us exceptional, had made us exceptional. But when we look at what is causing Aetna to pull out of the health care market, out of the exchange, then friends, we are looking at something. We are looking at something that is real and something that is telling as far as who we are becoming. We can become mediocre. When we hear the words, make America great again, when we hear the words, make America safe again, when we hear the words, make America work again, why are those words, what's wrong with those words? A lacrosse team, Long Island, New York, played a part of a speech of President Trump saying that at the end of his inauguration address. Somehow the coaches felt they had to issue an apology for the lacrosse team using the words of the American president. Let's make America safe. Let's make America great again. God bless you. I love you. They had to apologize. You had coaches apologizing for that. The only question, folks, and you better take it seriously, what is going on here? I'm CL. Be back. Now, coming up in the show will be California Ted Hayes. He is an advocate not only for the homeless, but he is an advocate for those who are being overrun by what is now an invasion, as Ted calls it, in Southern California. Ted actually says he's coming to us from occupied Southern California. We'll find out why he says that in just a little bit, coming up after the 6:30 hour. Stay with me. He's coming up in the 6:30 hour, and certainly want you to hear what he has to say. Remember this name, Constantino Banda Acosta. He was deported 15 times. Remember that name. We'll talk about that with Ted Hayes at the 6:30 hour. Now, folks, to give you an idea of where we are going, to give you an idea of the type of mindset that is driving America, and this may actually speak somewhat, and not negatively, but it also it speaks to the rise of a personality like a Donald Trump to the presidency of the United States. But I am hearing that the former wrestler, known as The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, actor, humanitarian, philanthropist, is seriously considering running for president in the year 2020. Now, Dwayne, if you want to get an idea of what C.L. Bryant's son looks like, he looks a lot like The Rock. My son, Jane and I are so proud of that. Well, I mean, not proud that he looks like The Rock, but we're so proud that our son is very handsome. He's a very handsome kid. He gets most of his looks from me. But just the same, he looks, that's who he would favor. He favors very, very much like The Rock. And I think that, yes, he is a great American success story. This guy is. He really is. I've never met him. Had a chance to, but I never met him. Love to meet him, especially now in these next few years before 2020, so that maybe we can get him on the show a couple of times before, he blows up to presidential status. Because, folks, if you don't think that the climate is right in this country for an Oprah Winfrey, my colleague Aaron McCarty and myself were talking about this just yesterday. That type of personality cannot rise or be elected to the greatest, the highest office in the land just on celebrity. You're crazy. There is a climate in this country right now that is so celebrity driven and so devoid of substance that, hey, it could happen. Oprah, Dwayne Johnson. Well, I don't think Kanye West could ever be president. But he'd get some votes. He'd get quite a few votes. So that's where we are. While our healthcare system is in a death spiral without anyone coming to its rescue, and the doctrine of mediocrity, even though when you point to these various personalities that I have just mentioned, they excel. They are at the top of the heap as far as their professions are concerned. But that does not offer us as Americans any solutions to the body politic, the constitutional infusion that must be understood for our nation to run right. Our nation was not founded upon celebrity. In fact, to the contrary. Our nation was founded by rebels who could have been hung if they failed. What we are looking at now is a country that is wanting those who have already reached a pinnacle without any real sweat in the game constitutionally to lead us. The one reason I respect Donald Trump is that he has at least participated in the game in ways that meant he had to truly get dirty. Not you know what? People have asked me, and I'm going to explain it to you like this, how I feel about it like this. People have asked me, former pastor, radio host, and all of that type thing, why don't you run for office? Well, yeah, I could probably run for office, and with the abilities I have to communicate, probably win some office. But why would I do that? Why would I do that? This is what I do, you see. And this is what I really would like to try and do even better and larger, you see. Just because a person happens to be appealing personality-wise and appealing as far as the masses are concerned does not necessarily make that person, would it make that person a great president or senator or congressman? No. Even though I support statesmen, and that's what I'd like to see running for office, that doesn't necessarily make me one. Are you hearing me? What we need is someone who has a heart towards statesmanship as it relates to the body politic, you and me. And then they enlist folks like myself to help them with their message. Get it out there. You understand? But someone who comes in riding on the flaming star of celebrity, that's all it is. They've made a lot of money being the celebrity, but what skin do they have in the game as being statesmen? What skin? Yes, Oprah's a great philanthropist, a great, you get a book, you get a car, she's great at that. She is fantastic at that. She is a mogul. There is no doubt about it. And Dwayne Johnson is becoming a billionaire. He is a mogul. But that does not translate to presidential. I have seen, and I think we are witnessing someone who did it differently, who is a mogul, begin to understand exactly what I'm talking about. Celebrity and mogul does not translate to presidential. He's learning that as he goes. But then the empire that Trump has, I'm not really sure. Oprah may actually be rich. In fact, I think Oprah may be richer than Trump. I don't know. She may be. I don't know. She certainly has the same type of celebrity status in New York City across the world as Donald Trump. Dwayne Johnson is on his way, and evidently he's expecting to have arrived by 2020. CL, back in a minute. Yesterday, and the buzz is still going on, the testimony of the intelligence community before Senate committee. And the buzz is the Russians. The Russians. That's the buzz. How they influenced this past 2016 election. And the ever debunked question is, was the Trump administration involved with it? And the ever emerging apparent answer is no. The progressive liberals are painting, and I played several clips for you on yesterday, and I played several clips for you yesterday of liberals and how the progressive liberal media, MSNBC, CNN, how they are creating the mental picture that there must be something nefarious. There's something shady going on. That is why Donald Trump fired Comey at the time that he fired him, to stop him from further investigating his involvement with the Russians. Well, anybody with any common sense, and that's why I'm telling you that the unread, unwashed masses, if you can just plant that type of seed in their heads without any proof of anything being real, they'll take it and run with it. College students will do the same thing. And they're learned. I don't know how washed they are. In college, I wasn't too washed. I was trying to learn, but because you had to pay to have your clothes washed, sometimes you're unwashed. But they are buying into the idea that somehow there is something nefarious going on. Now, I mentioned this on Wednesday. I'm going to tell you again today. The Russians have always interfered with elections around the globe. So have we to a certain extent. We have to. We've always interfered with them. And when the biggest coup that the Russians or the Americans could pull off would be to interfere with each other's presidential elections. And we've interfered. We've messed in theirs too. Yeah, we have. We've messed in theirs too. Mikhail Gorbachev came to power. We helped in that. Yeah, we did. We helped him. Back in 1960 is what I told you on Wednesday. Back in 1960, the presidential election between John Fitzgerald Kennedy and Richard Milhous Nixon. It was a tight race. It was tight. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, as you may recall, was the son of former bootlegger, racketeer, and mobster. Yeah, he was. Joe Kennedy, Joseph P. Kennedy. He was his son. And it is common knowledge now that the old man pulled every string that he could pull to get his son elected president, even climbing in bed with known underworld figures, especially in Chicago and Florida. Some say that's what got Kennedy executed in the streets of Dallas, was the mob ties that his father had knotted up himself. But in any event, Russian premier, Soviet premier, Nikita Khrushchev thought that the kid would be a perfect president because he was weak. And Khrushchev had designs on putting missile bases, silos in Cuba, or Cuba, as Kennedy used to call it. So he tested the young president to see if, in fact, he was weak, and Kennedy proved to be American strong. He had help by, no doubt, his bulldog of a brother, Robert F. Kennedy, who faced down the Russians at a very grim time of America being on the brink of nuclear war. And so the Russians have had designs on our elections. Nikita Khrushchev bragged about getting Kennedy elected. Yeah. He bragged about the influence he had on the election here in America. He didn't want to see Nixon become president because Nixon, having been the vice president of a strong American general like Dwight David Eisenhower, obviously had a little metal in his spine as well. But Kennedy had been untested, even though Khrushchev certainly underestimated a bona fide war hero. If you ever get a chance, see the movie PT 109. It is about President John F. Kennedy and the type of intestinal fortitude and character that he had when his PT boat, patrol torpedo boat, was cut in half, and he saved the men on board by swimming several miles to safety, going back and getting them, in some case one by one, and swimming back to shore with them, though he was injured permanently himself. Khrushchev underestimated that American president, and I do believe that Vladimir Putin, for all of the accolades that our now President of the United States, Donald Trump, gave him, and all of the leeway that Trump had wanted to have in opening the door and building the bridge to Russia and America communicating back and forth and cooperating back and forth, I think it has it does lend itself to the idea that Trump was weak on Russia. I think both the progressive liberal media and the Russians underestimate this American president as well. I'll be back with California Ted Hayes when we return. Bye now. CL, back with you here on the weekend show. It is the weekend. It's Friday, threshold to Saturday, and my favorite day of the week, Sunday. And coming to you now is one of your favorites. I always get great feedback when we have this gentleman on. I call him California Ted Hayes. He is an advocate not only for the homeless, but a watchdog of the invasion that is going on across our borders. Ted Hayes, welcome back to the CL Bryant Show. How are you, brother?
I'm great, and I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to come and share with your listeners.
Well,
And I'm a little peeved today, very upset about a couple things. One, of course, is occupied Los Angeles in California. Some really bad things are happening out here in Compton, which we can talk about. But also, there's a professor down at Texas A&M by the name of Professor Tommy Curry. And Tommy Curry is calling on black people to kill white people every chance they get.
wow.
And this guy is a domestic terrorist that we need to report to the FBI and Homeland Security, and Texas A&M administration needs to be called on the table for allowing this man to express not his freedom of speech, but terrorist, treasonous ideas.
Absolutely, Ted. And you know what? Like I spoke about on yesterday, and Ted, I want to talk about this Tommy Curry a little bit more. But we are talking about the campus of, now this isn't Texas A&M is not an HBCU. It's not. Texas A&M is not a historic black college or university. It is a university that is still predominantly white. So this tells us something. It tells me something, Ted. It tells me that there is a design here by progressive liberals, whether they're white or black, to cause the type of unrest that this type of speak, there's a design. This type of speak causes that. So you have whites and blacks who are in collusion with one another to do this.
Yes.
Why is that? My question, though, to you, Ted, is why? Why?
It's an effort to undermine the American capitalist society, the Judeo-Christian society. That's all that it is. The socialists are not, as a whole, are not racist. The socialists will use anything, immigration, LGBT, race, anything that would undermine the underpinnings of America and throw us into a state of chaos. And that's what this stupid young man is doing. I don't think the man really understands what he's doing, Theo. I just don't believe he does.
He doesn't understand this one thing, Ted, is that we black folks in this country are 12% and shrinking of the population.
Right.
This young man does not understand that if, in fact, there was an uprising of both Hispanics, even though Hispanics are overrunning the borders, and blacks, we would still only represent about 25% of the population. And Ted, he does not understand that, and the folks at Texas A&M, they're letting him do it because they know that there's no way that if that type of uprising came, somebody would get squashed, and it wouldn't be them.
No, it would not. We would get absolutely slaughtered. And see, the thing that's really bugging me, if I was a white guy and I heard this black guy saying things that if I said it, I would be hauled off to jail for, I'm going to start locking and loading, and I'm not going to trust a black man, especially a stranger.
And that's the design, Ted. That's it. Well, you have just described the design in what they're trying to do.
Yes, and it's terror. I can imagine some white guys now running around thinking, oh, my gosh, I could be killed at any moment. It's bad enough we have these stupid knockout games going on where young men are running around knocking white people in the head just to see if they can knock them come out because they're mad about white racism or something else.
Yeah, or something that's perceived in their mind that's real or imagined. Here in Louisiana, over in Bogalusa, Louisiana, many years ago, Ted, there was a group of black men called the Deacons of Defense who formed a group among themselves to protect themselves against threats against the Klan. Now, what is happening in situations like you are describing are white people who very well may arm themselves against threats against black terrorists.
Why not?
And why wouldn't they?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't they? Isn't the American dream to protect your family, keep your family safe, warm,
Absolutely.
fed, and dry? That's what the American dream is.
Absolutely. See, our people, this is so embarrassing because we, the chattel slave descendants, the slave people, we have never, as a people, advocated violence, the overthrow of the white man by any means necessary. We've never done that. Sure, there was Nat Turner, there was Gabriel Prosser, and then Mark Bessie, and a few here and there, but never as a people.
No.
This is so aberrational. It has to be stopped. And today, my friend Sue Payne and I are gonna start some work. I just talked to Eugene Vigil over at Dr. Alveda King, and we need Project 21, your organization, as many organizational leaders as possible to do a couple things. One, we need to come out with a news statement, conference condemning this. We need a letter to A&M to tell them how shameful they're behaving themselves. We need to call upon the President, Jeff Sessions, and Homeland Security, the FBI, to take this man down as a real living domestic terrorist.
He is trying to breed domestic terrorism. If that same message had come from Al-Qaeda,
Yes.
there would be a different response to it. But the progressive liberal agenda is to use the face of black folks in order to start this type of thing. Ted, count me in as far as the statement is concerned. I want to add my name to that list. I'll call you offline here once I clear from the station. Yeah, that is exactly what we must do now. But guess what's going to happen? Go ahead.
What if a white professor said something like this? What do you think would happen?
Oh, man, there would be hell to pay.
Yeah, it would.
Oh, that'd be hell to pay. The liberal media, listen, Fox News would be all over them.
They should be.
Yeah, Fox News would be all over them. The liberal media, I would be all over them. Everybody would be all over them. That's why I'm going to be all over this guy. That's why I'm going to be all over this guy. Stay with me, Ted, through the break. I'm on with California Ted Hayes. We have much more to talk about in this hour with him. I'm CL. CL back with you on this Friday, the weekend show. On with California Ted Hayes. They're in occupied, as he calls it, occupied Los Angeles. We were talking about this idiot Tommy Curry, professor at Texas A&M, who is inciting violence against white folks. In fact, he's inciting murder against white folks on the campus of Texas A&M. Never would have thunk it, but it's going on. Also, Ted, I'm sure you're aware of an HBCU, Bethune-Cookman, where Betsy DeVos, who is the Secretary of Education now under Donald Trump, was speaking at their commencement. And the students began to boo her and turn their back on her at their own commencement exercise.
Yeah, I heard.
This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. A prestigious event turned into a mob rally. Ted, what is going on?
What's going on, of course, we can keep blaming the socialists and blame the lapdog, blacky, liberal blacks, and under the Democratic control. We keep blaming them, sure, but really the blame is on us, The blame is on us, so-called Republicans, conservatives, because I don't see any backlash from our people. We're sitting silent and letting these people run amok. It's time that we get on the offense and start seizing these matters immediately. We need to start confronting all these black student unions and confront them on this issue and question them. Is this in keeping with the tradition and the legacy of the people who gave their lives for us to be free, to turn around now and try to enslave other people at the same time enslave ourselves back in the very thing we escaped from?
Exactly.
It's up to us conservatives. It's up to us Republicans to fight this thing.
And
the devil going to be the devil. We can keep blaming the devil all day long. He accepts that. Us, the Centaurians, the Guardians, the Watchmen on the wall, get up and do our job.
You're right, Ted. We can always say the devil made me do it. No, he didn't. You chose to do it.
Yeah.
You choose to you can choose this or you can choose that.
Yeah.
And the devil doesn't make you do anything. You choose to do it.
There's an old urban myth that goes like this. The devil was walking down the sidewalk one day past the church, and there was this guy was walking down the sidewalk one day past the church, and then the devil was sitting on the curb of the street with his head and his hands depressed and almost to the point of tears. And the guy said, "What's the matter, Mr. Devil?" The devil said, "Them people there blame me for everything."
It can even cause the devil to be depressed because he is blamed for everything. Ted, when we look at the lack of decorum, and I'm not really sure that people even understand the word decency anymore. Decency is out the window these days. There is no shame. There is no decency. Anything goes that makes you feel as though you are empowered. But there are some things that actually unempower you, and I think the actions of a Tommy Curry and the actions of students on the campus of Bethune-Cookman actually unempowers them. What do you say?
No, absolutely. Not only does it unempower them, but I think I said it earlier, it puts them in danger. This man does not love black people. He don't love anybody. He doesn't love himself. He hates himself. But by putting out that kind of paranoia in the air, this puts black people in some real serious danger now. And that's why it needs to be stopped. Because, again, if I was a white guy and I heard a black man saying something like that about, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious. I'm going to have my gun in my hand, ain't going to trigger when I'm around black men. But I don't know what they're going to do now. I just don't know. And that thing is out there in the air.
Yeah.
We had enough issues with the Black Lives Matter thing. Now
and the paranoia in this country, down here in my neck of the woods, even though we stream live throughout the country, I have a feeling this is going to rise throughout the nation. There is a move to take down historical Confederate monuments. And Ted, I am of the idea that you can't rewrite it. You can teach history, but you can't rewrite it. And this was the Confederacy. This what it was, and I think we can learn from it, but we can't rewrite it.
Yes, we can, and that's why Jews are very good at this. They say, never forget.
Right.
They don't cover up Hitler. I don't know if you get a chance to watch the History channels or not.
Yeah, I watch it.
The other day, there's something about Hitler on there over and over and over again. I think, wait a minute, Jews must be lying. It's absolutely correct because they don't want you to forget that.
Never forget it. Never forget it.
So that's what's going on, brother. They're trying to, the socialists are trying to unravel our country, but it's really going to be up to us Republicans, particularly us black ones, to fight this thing. It's going to take us to do it. Nobody else is going to do it.
I absolutely agree. And let me ask you this. Ted, there is this thing that I saw in the news cycle. It was yesterday that I saw it in the news cycle, but there is a name, Constantino Banda Acosta. He was deported 15 times from this country. He pops up again in a hit and run, a DUI hit and run in Anaheim, California, there down in Southern California. And he nearly killed a little kid there in that car that was with his parents. And Ted, I just don't understand how we are allowing people who in and out of this country who have been deported in and out of this country to continue to do this type thing. What's up with that? What's the design with that?
We as black folks, as a chattel slave descendants, we don't run this country. We don't make the laws. We're not the judges and so forth. It's our Anglo-English-speaking white brothers. God bless them. The problem is that our Anglo-English-speaking white brothers don't know who they are. They're very insecure about being white. So when the illegal alien comes here and he happens to have some brown skin on him, and he says to the white man, he says, white man, you are a racist. White man says, why am I a racist if I'm just telling you can't be coming into my house without permission? That's international law. He says, so why am I a racist? He says, look at my skin color. You treat me the way you treat the blacks. And because the white man in this country doesn't understand his role with black people, he then is humbled and he's intimidated. And someone has told me, I've heard anyway, that if you don't define yourself, others will define you. So what's happened is they've defined the white guy in this country, and the white guy says, all right, I'll let it go this time. And look at how we suffer because he's insecure about who he really is.
Wow, that's a very powerful and provocative point, Ted. That's very powerful and provocative. I want to investigate that a little bit more with you when we return. I hear the music. So hang on with me through the break. Back with California Ted Hayes when I return. Yeah. Ted, I mean to tell you something, man. That was provocative. That was provocative. Anglos are insecure about being white to the point where they allow illegal immigration into this country because, would you say it's white guilt? The illegals that are coming to this country from south of the border with the brown skin, they are using an age-old tactic that is known as white guilt. Are whites actually succumbing to that, Ted?
Unfortunately, yes, sir. And it started with Jesse Jackson, and it surely happened right after Dr. King was assassinated. That's one of the things that converted me to become an active civil rights activist was when I saw how white people had been crying and pouring their hearts out over this black man because of he had to die for the way whites had treated black people. They were crying. They wanted to be healed, and instead of Jesse Jackson and the brothers and sisters in a Christian way reaching out and healing our white brothers, they saw an opportunity to grind them in the face and to play that guilt card. And poor white brothers and sisters, man, they subjected themselves to that to the point to where over the next generation, we got a Barack Obama because they were afraid to stand up and tell the truth about that man for fear that they'll be called racist. And our white brothers have been paralyzed.
So the exploitation began by using white guilt against them, and in turn, they began to exploit the very people that they said they were wanting to help. And when I hear statements like you just told me about with Tommy Curry, This is exploitation of black folks. It's also exploitation of white folks.
Yes, sir.
This is exploitation.
And this has been the problem. See, I don't call it white guilt. I call it legitimate white concern. And, you know, a person can be concerned about something and upset about something, and they're feeling bad, but they don't know what to do about it. And along comes this person and says, well, it's your fault. It's all on your plate. And then, of course, if you're insecure, you accept that.
Yeah, and, you know, our children, Ted, I have 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and I have noticed that if they want, especially my older daughters, if in fact they want to tug at my heartstrings, they always point back to something that may have been lacking in their growing up years. And believe me, that was hand to mouth when they were, my older girls were growing up, from God's hand to my mouth, as Jane and I were po. And so, man, I got to tell you something. If they want to pull at the heartstrings, they always point back to that. And guess what? It does soften me. It does change how I approach that particular situation. That is what black folks and illegals, I think, are doing to the wealthy structure in this country right now.
Yep, and when I'm telling my white brothers more and more, now y'all listen to me. Y'all, they're white, you listening now. Y'all listen to me, okay? Stop running around here feeling guilty about being successful. Stop running around here feeling guilty about building the greatest nation on the face of the earth. The reason why people come rushing to this country, legally or illegally, because they recognize what you have done. Essentially, they are jealous of you. You know something, white folks? You did something in world history that nobody has ever done. You guys went to war with yourselves because you questioned the issue of slavery. How is it that we can have a Declaration of Independence, yet hold fellow human beings as slaves, and you went to war to change that? This is the first time that I know of that a people fought itself over the existence of another people. And I'm telling you, white folks, you did a wonderful, wonderful thing for all time. You laid down your lives. And what I'm saying to you, get your chin off your chest. Get your shoulder back. Get your head up. Be proud of who God made you. Because if you don't start understanding your role, these people are going to take your country away from you.
Now, Ted, you know you're going to be called a Tom for saying that.
Yeah, I'm a Tom. I'm a Tom. Absolutely. Look, Uncle Tom is a hero. He protected the slaves, helped them out. He got beaten up for the sake of the slaves. He would not put up with the Master LeGrand's antics, and they killed Uncle Tom for black people's sake. Yeah, I'm an Uncle Tom, but Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, all those guys, they are Sambos and Quimbos, the guys who killed Uncle Tom.
Wow, you're absolutely right, because a lot of people, even black people, don't understand that Uncle Tom was beaten to death because he refused to beat another slave.
Yes.
And Ted, I understand exactly what you're saying. A lot of people may not, but that's the idea behind what you and I do is refusing to beat other people who have been in captivity. We refuse to beat them.
And this Tommy Curry, what he's doing, he's beating our people.
He's beating them.
And he's beating them in the face of Simon LeGrand, the old socialist racist.
Yeah. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, all of them have beaten them. They have beaten them so bad that they make them think that it wasn't them. They wasn't them beating them. It's somebody else beating them. That's been the deception.
Theo, you know what? I want to propose to you on air. Maybe I should propose to you off air. But, man, you know what? I've been thinking for many, many years. We need to create an Uncle Tom Award. We need to create an Uncle Tom Award.
Oh, boy.
Give out an award to guys like you, me, the King. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, my goodness.
An award to people who are really out there fighting for the blessedness of black people and for this country.
Actually tell the story of Uncle Tom and give an award for it.
Sir, we will raise the conversation in this country to the ceiling, and they'll walk up and try to cut it down, and we will ambush them.
Only you, Ted. Only you would have thought of something like that out there. In let me tell. I mean, you know. Hey, let's talk about that. Let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
You said that you are very concerned about what's going on in Compton. What's happening there?
Gosh, my brother. I'm working with Pat Moore. She's a community legend and activist out here in Los Angeles. I'd like to have her on the show sometime. You will be very impressed with this black woman.
Yeah.
And she used to be a city council person for the city of Compton. Well, what's going on now is Compton's almost like 70, maybe 80% Hispanic Latino. It used to be an all-black town. The city council somehow still remains pretty much black, but they have a movement. They had a rally out here the other day where they spoke in their own language, and basically what we found that they were saying is they're going to take over Compton. They're going to run the black council people out, and they're going to take over Compton. They're going to take California back to Mexico.
Wow.
And you know something? And the funny thing about it was in one of the city council sessions, which
Ted, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We're coming back to you after the break. Be right back. Ted Hayes. Yeah. Ted Hayes coming to us from Los Angeles, California, where he says the place is occupied. We were talking about Compton and what's going on there. Ted, continue your thought.
Yeah, but for those of you who don't know, Compton is like a suburb town of L.A., and they're physically, literally connected. It used to be pretty much all black town years ago, but now since the invasion began, it has totally flipped around, and the foreigners who are occupying the city of Compton are now threatening to politically get rid of the black members of city council and basically to drive black people completely out of Compton. And they're pretty serious about it. One good light in it, though, is at the city council meeting the other day, and Pat Moore can tell you more about this because she was there. Some of the United States citizen Mexicans jumped up and they started shouting at these people saying, you know, until y'all showed up with your immigration, they said, we were getting along fine, us Mexicans and black people, but you guys brought that racism from Mexico, and we're tired of it. So thank God that there's now beginning to be some backlash from Mexican U.S. citizens fight these people. But
So,
brother,
Ted, you're saying that before the illegal immigration, the illegal aliens came across the border, the American Latinos and the American blacks were getting along okay in Los Angeles?
yeah, we had our issues, you know, dating back when the OGs and the Vatos were in prison together. Back in the day, the OGs, the black brothers, they used to kind of pick on the Vatos, you know, because of who they were. You know,
Right.
You got the numbers, you're gonna pick on the weaker guy.
Right.
And so there's some animosity there that I've been working on for years to clear up. But that's about it. We've never had high school racial riots between blacks and Mexicans. We've never had it where a black man is not allowed to walk in the neighborhood where he once lived without fear of getting beaten up or killed. We've never had that where 75 to 80% of our school children are Hispanic Latinos who are basically anchor babies. And oh my gosh, it's like, and the black folks, the grassroots people, we finally see it. We recognize it because we're working to fix it. But your African American leaders, every last single elected one of them,
Wow.
sit here and letting this happen, and many of them are actually encouraging the occupation.
Wow. Wow. That is incredibly strong. That is incredibly strong. And as always, Ted, you are, tell us how to get a hold of you. Tell us how to hear your thoughts and talk to you if, in fact, people want to get in touch.
Yes, if you want to call me, you can call me my cell, 424-248-4219. if you want to catch me on my website, go to tedhayes.us. That's pretty simple, ain't it? TedHayes.us, United States. Okay, Ted Hayes, United States.us. Simple as that.
Sounds good. Sounds real good. Hey, man, I never have enough time when I have you on the phone. Listen, I'll be calling you in just a few hours. Give me about 2 or 3 hours, but I'll be calling you a little bit later on today. I want to pursue something here in regard to this Tommy Curry and this thing that happened at Bethune-Cookman with Secretary Betsy DeVos. There has to be a stopgap somewhere. Something has to happen now to stop the tide that's beginning to overflow. Listen, God bless and keep you. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right, thank you. Bye.
I'm CL, the CL Bryant Show, and that was Ted Hayes coming to us from occupied L.A. And one of the things that is important to hear him say in that is that, and you know what? This is true, really, when we think about the overall immigration issue. For a while, and I'm just speaking in colors because that's what we do in America, unfortunately. That's what we do in America, unfortunately. But I remember when it was just a black-white type of issue. Ted brings up a point that I don't think we consider often. And when we search the annals of history, maybe we don't consider the fact that America is one country, at least, where the majority citizenry of the nation actually divided against its majority citizenry in order to fight that civil war, which primarily, not totally, because there was something called states' rights that, yeah, it had to do with the enslaved black person, but it also had to do with constitutional issues. But the country divided against itself for a character war that actually freed a people that was definitely in the minority. And if we don't learn the lessons of the past, it's a good chance we are, in fact, doomed to repeat them. Is this what's happening with the protest against Betsy DeVos? Is this what's happening with the idiotic rantings of a Professor Tommy Curry at Texas A&M? I'll lend some more thought to that when we return. I'm CL.
When you wake up in the morning and the light has hurt your head, the first thing you do when you get up out of bed is hit that streets a running.
Yeah. Texas A&M philosopher Tommy Curry. associate professor there, philosophy, at Texas A&M University, has a long history of public statements about U.S. race relations, but he has become now the target of a controversy online of online threats and race-based harassment that this week, after the American Conservative ran a piece about him that drew a lot of ire on a podcast that he was talking about as far as Django Unchained and all this type stuff. Another Quentin Tarantino, Jamie Foxx type of message, progressive liberal message. This is what I want to say about this. And I want you to see behind the curtain now, because there is a person behind the curtain. The smoke and the image of the great and powerful Oz, the Wizard of Oz, that kept the people of Oz in check or in fear or in trembling, was being manipulated by someone behind the curtain, the man behind the curtain. Tommy Curry, this man, is manipulated by people behind the curtain. You see, I could understand this if he was maybe an associate professor at Howard University or another historic HBCU, historic black university, college and university. I could probably understand the method that is. I could probably say that he was more acting on his own than not if he was at one of those colleges or universities other than Texas A&M, where the Aggies reign supreme. You know what you call an Aggie when they graduate, right? The boss. So when you have this type of speak coming from the campus of Texas A&M from a black professor who is actually in a very unique and elite type of position, period, then you know that the modus behind this is not him. He is being manipulated to say that. That's what you know. Now, nobody's going to tell you that, and everybody's going to say, well, you know, there's an uprising going. No, there is a progressive liberal agenda. And no, I'm not blaming the progressive liberals for it. I'm blaming the people who allow themselves to be used by it. Ted gave the analogy, or gave this vision of the devil sitting out on the curb in front of a church. It had to be a Baptist church, no doubt about it. And I can say that because I come out of the Baptist background experience. But Ted gives the vision of the devil sitting out on the curb in front of a Baptist church, I'll say, with his head in his hands, crying, depressed. And someone asks him, why are you crying, Mr. Devil? And he says, those people in there blame me for everything. Well, that's true, because we don't take responsibility for our own choices. Now, this person made a choice to say something inflammatory for a reason. There's one thing to say something inflammatory in defense of something, but never before in America do black people have the opportunities that we have now. We've never had access. in the way that we have now. So the question has to be, why would this man, Tommy Curry, this associate professor and philosopher, Tommy Curry, find himself saying what he is saying in 2017 America? I can understand it being said in, no doubt the 60s, even the 70s, 80s, yeah, even the 80s, yeah. And certainly back in the 20s and 30s, on back to slavery itself. I can understand inflammatory stuff like this being said. I can understand it. You can actually make sense of it, but not now. Why? Because there is nothing that the color of my skin would stop me from doing if I want to do it. That includes being president of the United States. Are you hearing me? There is nothing. I don't understand how black students who are graduating from college, which is still a coveted thing, it's a coveted thing, from a prestigious college like Bethune-Cookman, from Harvard, they want to have their own types of. At Harvard, black students are wanting to have their own commencement exercise. Yeah. No, there's something behind that. That's just not, there is a design to that. There is someone behind the curtain. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense for a rational person who hasn't come through the type of struggle that demands that type of response. It doesn't make sense for them to do it. The color of their skin does not stand in their way any longer. I'm CL. I'll be back to close it out.
If you had not have fallen, then I would not have found you. Angel flying too close.
Well, we're here to close it out and trying to make sense of it all, if there's any sense to be made of it. Not really sure. Not really sure. Republican Party doesn't really stand for what we once thought it should. Democrat Party has no identity whatsoever anymore except to rail against the President of the United States. Has no identity. Even the person running very hard for the nomination of the Democrat Party against Hillary Clinton was asked the other day, Bernie Sanders was asked the other day, hey, are you a Democrat? He says, no, I'm an independent. The Democrat Party doesn't stand for anything. Republican Party doesn't stand for anything. And, folks, we're falling for everything because it seems as though the body politic has no leaders, no leading parties. We're distracted with our American ADD by things that should not distract us. We're living in a world where we have real threats from crazy people. But unfortunately, we have so many crazy folks right here in our own country who want to give passes to those coming from outside of our country who have the intent to hurt us. We have enough problems of our own to deal with outside problems of those who are here illegally, and that's not semantics. That's not just semantics. They're here illegally, and are there rules of law or are there not? Do we have borders or do we not? Yeah, we're here trying to decide what to do. We don't know what to do. Yeah, we do look and are going to give, I am going to give this new administration an opportunity. But I certainly hope that you, the American citizen, you, my fellow Americans, I hope you give yourself an opportunity to use and exercise your voice boldly against the foolishness that is so readily taking over the narrative here in this country. It is insane what is happening, but you are going to have the courage to say so. Well, I want to thank God for the opportunity. I want to thank Him for bringing us to the close of yet another day. And I want to thank God for our men and women in uniform around the globe who defend our right to speak our minds. And until I'm able to talk to you again, I'm CL. And may God bless and keep you all.
And to the families left behind, we'll stand by your side, and the bond will never be torn for those who wear the uniform.
a small version of Blaze, where we have all kinds of things going on, the newsletters. But that's putting all these pieces together. And in that